Welcome, citizens of Gotham, to The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast focusing on all things the Dark Knight and the DC Universe. If you'd like to connect with the show, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads at tfrbatpod. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments, or even suggestions for future episodes of the show, you can reach us by email. Just shoot those to tfrbatpod@gmail.com. My name is Eric Carter, and I am your host, and I am joined once again by my co-host, Joe Fornerato. Joe, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Eric. Welcome back. It's been a while.
I feel like we say that every time now. So,
Yeah, we're a little sporadic now, but that's all right.
yeah, yeah. Well, we warned everybody that might happen, so I
But
don't
we
feel
we got a reason to talk tonight though, which is good.
we do absolutely for sure. And if you've seen the title of the show, you know what we're talking about. Of course, we reached the end of a DC television series. We've got another one, Joe, that's coming to an end pretty soon. Uh, Real end. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But before we do get into what we want to talk about today, I do want to take a moment and mention our partner sponsor in organic priced books. Now, everybody knows that we do have the holidays upcoming. We are in the thick of it. We're in November now. Joe and I were just talking about new books that are coming out before we hit record here. And the Organic Price Books is a great place to do your holiday shopping for that nerdy person in your life. If you're looking for absolutes, omnibus, hardcovers, trade paperbacks, it doesn't just have to be DC or Marvel. They sell any of the major brands. IDW, Boom Studios, Image, anything you're looking for, Organic Price Books has it. So make sure you use the link in the description of this podcast. Go there and use our promo codes. The first is TFRBatPod to save you $2 off of any order. And our second, TFRBatPod Ship It Together, will save you 5% on any order of three or more books. Now, Joe, what were some of the books you were bringing up? We've got Beyond the White Knight, the hardcover's coming, right?
So I think that's already out, but
Okay, that's already out.
we were talking about Batman Resurrection and Organic Press Books does have Batman Resurrection. So we were
Nice.
talking. I listen to the Audible. I like listening to Audible books while I'm working. I drive a lot for work, so that's what I went for. So eventually, I'm gonna get the hardcover because I want to have the physical copy. So I was just scrolling through, and I did notice that they have it there, which is nice to know.
Absolutely. I'll say this, if you know a Batman fan that has not read that book, I think it would be a fantastic Christmas present.
Yeah, I just finished it today, and I was really pleasantly surprised. I absolutely loved it. Maybe in the future we will have to discuss it on the show because we did discuss it a little bit prior to this recording.
Yeah.
So we might have to dedicate a whole show to it because I really loved it.
Yeah, I loved it as well. I blew through it in like 3 days. So, and I and I read the hardcover. So yeah, absolutely. Not only comics and graphic novels, but now we've got some prose novels at Organic Price Books. So go check out those guys, support them, and help out this show as you do so. But Joe, I before we get into the main event here, before we talk about the Penguin, I wanted to bring up. I just talked about another show that's coming to an end, and we're what? We're 7 episodes into the final season of Superman and Lois. And I just wanted to get your opinion really quick. I mean, how are you feeling about where the trajectory is going for the final season so far?
Well, I feel like we're gonna have to dedicate at least an episode to Superman and Lois. Have we
Yeah,
not talked?
yeah.
We haven't talked about it at all on this show, right?
We've touched on it here and there, but
Yeah,
nothing
but we
like
haven't like
done episodes or anything.
yeah. Um, this past episode was excellent. The whole season's been really good. You know, we know about all the, the stuff with the budget cuts and how they were going to navigate different characters. I think they've done a really good job with what they've been tasked to do. I'm glad that they have been able to plan this season out. Um, and I with three episodes left, right? They got 10 episodes.
Yep, 3 left.
It's really upsetting, but I feel like they've hit some major beats in this final season to kind of make you feel like they want to be the quintessential Superman story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this this is the show overall in itself, I have to say is one of my favorite pieces of Superman anything that I've experienced. Of course, I have a very special place for Man of Steel, and then there's certain Superman stories in the comics that I'm very attached to, but I mean, Superman and Lois is up there. This has just been a phenomenal show.
Yeah, I think we've discussed it before. To me, the tone of Superman and Lois is like that perfect balance between the Christopher Reeve stuff and the Snyder stuff with Henry Cavill because it's not over the top cheesy, but it has its moments of, you know, the traditional Superman. And
The
again,
aw shucks Superman, I'd
yeah,
say.
but and they do it almost in a tongue-in-cheek way sometimes
Yeah.
too, but it's done really like for lack of a better term, and I know I say that a lot because I'm not good with words, but like wholesome, like
Yeah,
just
it's very wholesome.
like just it just like you said, oh shucks, like it just makes you like smile. It really does. Like just this past episode, last season they touched on breast cancer and all the, you know, cancer, something that Superman has no control over, and how helpless he can feel over something like that. I felt like I was crying every episode. Um, and this season they've gone very different with the storyline with Lex Luthor and it being a more um angry storyline and like vengeful and revenge and all this stuff. And then they kind of took a step back this week and told a really different story that I don't even want to spoil for anyone that hasn't watched it. But man, it got me in the feels really badly. And for very different reasons.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't want to spoil it for anyone because it's not what you'd expect. But I feel like they might have done something that maybe has never been done in comics, to my knowledge. I mean, I think there might be some instances of it, but I haven't personally read them.
We'll have
And
to
there's
discuss this after the episode because I'm
yeah,
curious what you're talking about.
it was just really nice. It was just
Yeah.
a really nice episode. And we're definitely gonna have to touch on the series as a whole at some point because I think we both love it, and I do think it deserves that kind of attention because there's a lot to talk about with the show. Um,
That sounds like a good January idea. Something,
mhm. When things are
when
dying down a little bit.
when everything, sucks, at least we can shoot some positivity into the podcasting space. Because January is the worst month of the year.
Well, this year Creature Commandos will be done in January, so we'll have that too.
Yep. Yep. All
So
right. Well, I'll say this and then we'll move on from Superman and Lois for now. It is very nice to have a CW superhero show that I am actively going to be very sad when it's over. Like
mhm.
it did not overstay its welcome, I'll say that.
That's the biggest takeaway I have it because I know people are mad that it's ending with season 4, but my argument against that would be, would you watch Flash season 5 right now if someone asked you to? Um, I think Arrow was probably the most consistent of the CW shows, but I think even that kind of meandered. I think
Hmm.
Superman and Lois has been the most consistent, and I'm happy they're going out before they overstay their welcome, and they are going out at the top.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so let's go into another DC show. And of course, we're here to talk about the Penguin. Okay, so this is not Deja Vu, Joe. We did an episode a little while back about the Penguin, but of course we covered the pilot for the Penguin, and now the show has wrapped up. So I thought it would be a good time since this is another entry into the world of our current Batman universe. I thought it would be a good opportunity to talk about this next chapter. So you and I have both finished the series. I would assume that most people that listen to this show have finished the series. Um, but just before we really just dive into the minutia of the Penguin, just overall general thoughts. What did you think of the entire season of this show? And on top of that, how did it how did it align with your expectations of what you thought it would be?
Hmm. So I I've been very torn on my thoughts of the Penguin. Not to say I don't know whether I like it or not, not to say it's good or bad. And I don't even know if I've actually talked to you about this, but I have a hard time determining how how good of a show it is as a Batman show
Mm.
or as a show. And it's very hard for me to separate the two or to judge the show impartially because I don't think I necessarily love the show as much as everyone else does, but I really like the show a lot. It's just I feel some of the reactions of the show might be a little, and I feel like hyperbolic is almost like an overused term now, but I feel like,
Hyperbolic is hyperbolic.
yeah, like as stupid as that sounds, um, I don't think I would put it in the upper echelon that some people are making it out to be because I don't think the show is doing anything groundbreaking, but it's doing what it does superbly.
Hmm.
So again, like, how do I sound negative by saying I really, really love this show? Well, because I just don't think it's the best show made. Like I don't think it is Sopranos level storytelling because I think Sopranos did it first and I think Sopranos did it better. And as a Batman show, I don't think it does enough to make it a comic booky show. Does that make sense? Like, I have a hard time like judging this show on numerous factors, but also I enjoyed the heck out of it. I watched it every week. I
Mhm.
couldn't wait to watch each episode, but it was just a really great show. I don't think it was the best show ever made. I don't think it was the best comic book show ever made, but it doesn't need to be either.
No, and I will say, I mean, we just spent a good little bit talking about Superman and Lois.
Hmm.
I mean, if we're talking, as a comic book show, I'm going to tell you right now, I prefer Superman and Lois
Yeah.
from that aspect.
Which is
Um,
not even a fair comparison. It's just
no,
more
it's
like trying
not.
to it's hard for me to like put into words what I feel about this show without always having a caveat because like I have non-superhero fans calling me and being like, "Hey, did you watch the Penguin? You must have been losing your mind when this happened." And I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." Like I it's actually hitting really well with non-comic book fans,
It
which
is.
part of me loves and another part of me is like, well, no, no, you should be watching this. Like yeah, like it's a torn thing with me where it's like, oh, so you think this is comic booky? No, like it's not.
Well, and that's that's kind of how I have to look at it from that kind of thousand mile view because I mean I look at a lot of these things through the eyes of my wife because she's
Hmm.
very super casual.
Yeah.
Um, she loves to go see the big superhero movies when I want to go see them. But like a lot of times the TV shows, like she could not get into Peacemaker. She watched one episode. She didn't care for anymore. She watched Superman and Lois with me in the beginning. She's fallen off of that. She could care less to get to be caught up. It's just not,
Oh, that's
you know,
interesting.
yeah, it's just not her thing. But the Penguin. she was ready each
Hmm.
Sunday night to watch the Penguin. So that's what's so interesting to me is exactly what you said. There's a lot to appeal that appeals to not only the casual but also the non-comic book fan.
Yeah.
And I
And
think,
they're treating it like an HBO show. Like
yeah,
it's appointment HBO viewing to a lot of people.
yes, yeah. And I don't know how much of that is the story and the show or we're and I've told you before, I mean, we're HBO people. We
Hmm.
watch, there's a lot of shows on HBO that we watch regularly. And I don't know if we're just programmed now.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the next big HBO series. Um,
I also have people that have no idea what the Batman is and they love the show.
mhm. Yeah,
There's and I don't know, like part of me is like, "Oh, well that's good." But also like, "Wait, what? Like you didn't care to watch the Batman first? Like isn't that kind of the point?" But maybe it's not the point. Maybe it's okay. And I don't have an answer. I don't think there's a right or wrong, but that's what I think is so hard for me is I don't know how to feel about all these different reasonings on why people are in love with the show. And again, I love the show, but
yeah.
it's I don't know if you want to get into it this much so quickly, but like to me, it feels like a less what's the word everyone used when they people described like what Todd Phillips did with the Joker? Like not less vindictive? Like like they were pretty blunt with the Joker saying we didn't want to make a superhero show, but we used the IP to sell the property or to sell
Right.
a movie.
Yeah.
Um I feel like this is a less harsh version of that.
Yeah. See, I mean, I have heard that comparison, not much, but I have heard that comparison, and that I just don't agree with because I mean, the
They're in,
nods in this series,
yes,
the references in this series are just
they feel more genuine
they do.
than something like the Joker. And I'm not even talking about the sequel. We're not going to go down that road. But and I don't think it's a fair comparison because there are many differences between the two. But I also think to an extent, I think if Matt Reeves wasn't as, I guess, open and he just seems like a nicer dude, if that's fair. Um, and he seems more open about Batman as a character. I feel like it could be taken very similarly to Joker. I mean, like just something as simple as changing his name. Um, I feel like there's no reason to do that. And we've talked about it, and it's stupid.
Let's circle back to that for a second
Okay.
because and I'm just gonna go ahead and warn everybody, we're not doing spoiler free. This is a wrap up episode. If you haven't seen the show, just pause here, go watch the show, and then come back. But it's so funny to me that it seems like sometimes Matt Reeves works so hard to avoid being comic booky, but yet he leans into so many aspects of the
Yeah.
comic books that drives me nuts.
Yes. Like I feel like why would you paint yourself into a corner with something as trivial as the name? It doesn't make sense. Nobody is going to say the show is less grounded because his name is Oswald Cobblepot. They're going to say, "Oh, well, that's his name. It's the Penguin. Who cares?" And just
Yeah,
call him Oz. Who cares?
exactly. But there's like that it struck me in the final episode when Sophia is back in Arkham and she receives the letter from Selena Kyle
Hmm.
and they're establishing that,
Yeah.
the sisters and I'm like, well, I mean I, that's cool, but we're not gonna we're
And
not,
or like calling her the Hangman. It doesn't get much more comic booky than that.
no.
Like you can call a villain the Hangman Killer, but you can't call Oswald Cobblepot Oswald Cobblepot. Or you can call him the Penguin. Like I don't know. Again, it's trivial. It's stupid. Like to me, I don't know what's dumber, us harping on it or him changing the name. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
make
with
a
you.
difference. It doesn't make a difference either way. It's just one of those things that is puzzling to me because I just don't get why you would even care enough to change it
Mhm.
when it doesn't matter. Um, And like we joke about it with the Batman what do you call it? The documentaries.
Mhm.
The podcast every week was outstanding. I loved listening to it every week, but man, again, if you heard that word grounded and drank every time you heard it, you'd be hammered.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, I get it. The show was fascinating. They did a really good job with a lot of things with the show. It was a lot of fun every week. I don't want to sound like I'm beating it up. I'm trying to get the negative out of the way because I really did enjoy the ride that the show went on. Um, they Where we start and where we end, I don't know what I expected. Um, I really didn't know what to get from the show. Even from like the first episode with the mother stuff, I didn't know how far that was going to go and how important that was going to be.
And holy crap.
Yeah, like apparently there's precedent to him and his mother from Pride and Prejudice. I never read Pride and Prejudice.
No, it's a blind spot for me as well. So I've got to
Yeah,
catch
I've
up on
been
that.
meaning to check it out, and if that's the case, good on them for, it's hard because I think Penguin is one of those characters that probably lends well to having like a an odd backstory that we've never known about because you don't ever really get a lot of story from Penguin. But also, it's one of those things where like this does feel, and this is a compliment from me. It might not sound like it, but like this feels like a again, we kind of said that with the Batman, where the Batman felt like a Black Label like miniseries. This kind of feels like a miniseries for the Penguin. That's kind of like like a what's like when there's a crossover and there's the tie-ins. Like this feels like a Penguin tie-in that you probably didn't need to read for the main story, but it lends itself to the main story.
Well, and that's actually one of the biggest pros I'm going to give this show is it is it's a fascinating part of the universe, but it is very much more versus how some of the MCU shows have been. It is not required viewing to understand something in the universe.
Exactly. It's like a branch. Like you can
Like,
go off to the side and you could watch this and you get some of the story, but if you skip it, you'll get okay, this happened off screen, Penguin's now the boss.
yeah, well, and it can be that connection from the end of Batman when you saw him looking out the window in the Batman, and he's clearly on the rise.
Hmm.
And then if he's risen in
Yeah.
at the beginning of the Batman Part Two, you you can connect the dots
Yeah.
without having seen the show. But the show, I feel like, I mean, if you're invested, that's just another great part of the universe that you
Yeah.
can enjoy.
And the counterpoint of that is like I've had friends come up to me and say they watched the show and I'm like, there's a movie, right? And they're like, oh no, like who's Batman in the movie? Like they literally had no idea what this was. So to them, it's just a Penguin show. And I'm shocked that like it works that well for them. And like I don't even know if he's ever gonna search out the movie. Like
Yeah.
he might. And I said but I also like I warned him, don't rush because the sequel's not coming out for another 2 years.
Well, I'll tell you this. I don't know how you couldn't know that the Batman is attached to the show because every time the show ends
Oh, I
on
know.
Max,
It tells you go watch the Batman.
the
Yeah.
Batman. So, I want to touch on this though because we had talked about when we covered the pilot, you and I both had concerns about them blatantly expressing that Batman was not going to be in this show,
Yes.
and that was a concern. However, the goal was to make you understand that this was a show about the Penguin. And in that, I mean, mission accomplished because every plot thread, the Penguin is firmly at the center of each plot,
Yeah.
whether it be the family war between the Maronis and the Falcons, or the mother situation with his family ties, or with Victor. I mean, everything was linked back and circled around this one character. And it was honestly, if you think about all the subplots in this show, there's a lot to juggle. And I think that's the biggest, accolade I can give them is they pulled all of those story threads off really well.
Yeah, and listen, as a Batman fan, as a comic book fan, of course you want Batman to show up at some point. You want at least Bruce Wayne to show up. You want some connection there.
Hmm.
I also understand from a storytelling perspective, from a creative, which I am not, I get why they would think, you know what, that's going to take away from the Penguin, and this is the Penguin show. They said they tried to work out even like a subtle thing where Vic meets Bruce Wayne. I think
Hmm.
I read somewhere they tried to find ways to get Batman in it. And again, I can dismiss all that. I don't, that doesn't bother me. Suspension of disbelief, like in comic books, not every superhero shows up to fight every battle. I get it. I do wish they would have at least mentioned him. And
Yeah,
that is frustrating.
yeah, I agree with that. I'll also bring up this counterpoint though. Um, my wife and I spent, although we enjoyed the Echo series,
Hmm.
we spent the entire series wondering when we were going to see Daredevil again.
Yes.
Because I mean, that
Because he
was
shows up early on. Yeah.
that was one of the most exciting parts of the show was seeing him, and then it kind of felt like a disappointment that we didn't see him again.
Yeah. So I will give them credit for like getting out in front of it and saying, like, he's not showing up. Get over it. This is not the story we're telling. Almost like saying, like, listen, we're not Marvel. We're not doing this for cameos. We're telling a
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
Um, and showing the press all eight episodes or 10. It was eight, right?
I think so.
Yeah. They showed the press all eight episodes. So the press even confirmed all that. Like, they're not lying to you. Unless they didn't show us a scene, they're telling us, that. And I don't know, did they get the final shot? The press?
I don't know.
Because
I
they,
haven't
they
heard.
didn't, luckily it was never spoiled. The final shot is really cool. Um, how did you feel about the final shot?
Oh, I mean, I was thrilled
Okay.
with the final shot. I mean, when it panned outside, I mean,
You knew it was coming. You had
when
to have kind of
they
felt it.
yeah, when they panned outside, because I thought they were just going to linger on the building and then cut to black, but when they panned over the city,
Yeah.
I felt it coming. And
Yeah.
but it was a great payoff when the light hit the sky.
Yeah,
Um,
it just seems like the perfect way to bookend it,
mhm,
Like that leads right into the movie. It is frustrating we're not getting the movie for a while, and that also means we're not getting a possible season 2 of this for even longer.
mhm. Yeah, well, I mean, so right now this is still designated as a limited series.
Yes.
So we'll see. I mean,
Matt they
we've
said
heard
Matt Reeves has
rumblings.
already said they're discussing it in early stages.
Yeah.
Listen, it if it, with the way the reviews were and the viewership was, they're not going to at least they're definitely going to at least discuss it. They've
Yeah.
already talked about other spin-offs. Um, sorry. I think he shut down the Joker rumors, if I remember correctly.
I believe so, yeah.
Because they're going to make rumors of everything. Um, but yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about like the stuff surrounding the show. Um, we haven't gotten into the show itself, but man, there were a lot of oh shit moments in the show.
Yes. Um, and you know that I think let's just go ahead and get the biggest elephant out of the room. This show does such a great job of it makes you feel a connection with Oz just to turn around and make an emphatic statement that he is not a good guy.
And that is definitely one of my positives because
Yeah.
part of me worried, like, are we gonna really start feeling for this guy?
Hmm.
And I didn't want to. It's okay to have reasons for why he's a bad guy, but I don't want to watch him do something evil in the Batman Part 2 and think, "Oh, well, he had a rough childhood." You know what I mean? Like I don't want that.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think the final despicable, most despicable thing he does in this show, to me, made the show what it was. And this is like a stupid thing with me because I don't think it's fair to say this because it is a shocking thing. But I also felt like it needed to happen to like get me on their side. The creators' side. Because if they didn't do that, I don't think I would have came out of this show as positive on it as I was. Because Vic, I mean, we're talking about Vic, I'm dancing around it, but I think Vic being this like protege son figure, father son type dynamic between the two of them, that was not something I was enjoying. I mean, I enjoyed it for the show.
Yeah,
It made for, like, looking back, I think it works perfectly now that I know where it led to.
right.
But I was really nervous that they were making the penguin this human figure. And I
Yeah.
didn't want that.
Yeah, and I mean, did it surprise you when Penguin killed Vic at the end?
Yes, it did. I'm not gonna lie, it did. But
Okay.
also, the minute he said, "You're like my family," like I think I felt like it was coming, but it didn't make it any less shocking.
See, and it got me, it completely caught me by surprise. I did not expect it. At this point when we had made it to the end of the series, I was like, okay, well, maybe Vic's going to show up in the Batman Part 2 at this point.
Yeah.
And it really, I mean, I gasped when he started strangling him. But Megan, I mean, like I said, my wife and I watched this entire series together. She said as soon as he started choking Vic, Megan said, I knew it.
Yeah.
She
I
said,
I felt the
when,
same way, but it did, like, again, it doesn't make it any less shocking.
mhm,
But part of me just felt it coming.
mhm.
I felt like its uneasiness of where they were and the tone of the show and how things have been going. I don't know why I felt it coming. I just did.
Yeah, well, and she said the same thing. My wife said pretty much the same thing that you did. As soon as he said, I feel like you're my family,
Hmm.
she knew that Oz was going to kill him. But what she said to me kind of, I guess it makes sense because he had just gone through what he went through with his mom.
Yeah.
And he said, as he was strangling him, I don't know if you caught everything he was saying as he was strangling Vic. Um, but he said, pretty much makes you weak.
Yeah. Yeah, I have
So,
the subtitles on, so I catch everything.
okay, yeah, I don't watch with subtitles.
Yeah. And he said something like it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Or,
like he was almost trying to comfort him as he's
yeah.
strangling him.
So it's a despicable act that he's doing for all the wrong reasons, but in his mind, he's justified, which makes it that much more sick. Was his ultimate goal is to be on top, and nothing is going to stand in his way, not even a weakness like family.
Well, and which is a thread, and you were talking about the different story points. I mean, that is a thread that as we've revisited a younger Oz in the show towards the end of the show, and we learned that, he killed his brothers so that he could be the one child in his mom's life.
Hmm.
He could be the focus of his mom's attention. I mean, it's they laid it out that it's far from the first time that he has done something like this for his own gain.
I mean, that is like the definition of a sociopath, right? Like
Yeah.
he, like you, at that young age, his brothers die. It's almost like like it literally is almost like he felt nothing. Like he's back at his house with his mom or his apartment, watching TV and laughing with his mom while his brothers are drowning.
And what I thought was fascinating about that is while his brothers are drowning, it's not like he's just put it out of his mind because you see him looking at the window and
Yeah.
looking at the rain. between,
but he's not hesitant. Like that's what I was waiting for is like, is he gonna be like
yeah.
thinking about, ooh, do I get them help? Do I not? Like, no, there's no, you could tell he's thinking about it, but he's also not regretting it at all.
No, yeah, because there's even like
There's no remorse.
there's this tiny little moment where he looks out the window and he sees how hard it's raining,
Yeah,
and he almost kind of grins a little and cuddles into his mom a little bit. And it's like that affirmation of I've done it.
yeah,
It's like, gosh. And I don't know who that kid is that played the young penguin or the young Oz, but man, he was good.
yeah, very good.
He nailed it. So I guess the so we had the mom.
And listen, it's an 8 episode show. There's no way we're going to be able to touch on everything with
No,
everything that
I
happened on the
I
show.
think outside of the mom and Vic, of course, the biggest storyline throughout the show was the struggle of power between the Gotham crime families.
Hmm.
And we had the Falcones, of course, with Carmine having died in the Batman, and then Sal Maroni, played by the fantastic Clancy Brown, and then, of course, Sophia, who I guess took on the Gigante name
Yeah.
at the towards the end of the show, so it's the Gigante crime family now.
Hmm.
But what did you? I know you love mob movies and the the whole Italian mob scene. So
Yeah.
what did you think of the crime family aspect of the show?
Well, I think, and they mentioned this even on the recap podcast, but that is a thing with the Italian mob and the fact that the Penguin breaks all the rules. He goes after their families. You don't do that. Like, it's one thing to go after Alberto. That's fine. Like, as stupid as that sounds, like that's fine. He's in there. He's part of it.
Hmm.
But to go after Sal's wife and Sal's son, that was where he crossed the line.
Hmm.
And
What a brutal scene, by the way.
I actually like, I feel like I had to rewind it because I'm like, wait, did the mother just burn too? Like, I'm like, where did she go? She was hugging her son while he's burning alive.
Yeah.
Um, Brutal, just brutal. No way out of that. You knew it. Like, he knew he was going to do that no matter what. Like, you don't set the guy on fire and then, I mean, you don't douse him in gasoline and not prepare to do that. Like, he was doing that no matter what.
And another
Um,
moment where Oz was just reveling in it.
exactly.
So, I mean, because he was, yeah, I mean, you could tell he was like the look on his face. He's getting his rocks off
Oh, and the
watching this.
taunting, he uses it to taunt Sal about the smell and all the, like he's
Yeah.
just that again, it's sick to say this, but when you're talking about a villain in a Batman show, we like our villains. And that is sadistically fun to see him be that villain. Like that's the Penguin I want to see. I
Hmm.
don't want to see the Penguin who loves his mom. I want to see the Penguin who is killing another mob family for no reason. I mean, in
Yeah.
his mind, there's a reason, but like I like this version of the Penguin. So that's where I was always torn with seeing the human side of him with his mom, but also you come to find out it's really not this. It's a weird relationship with his mom, and it's obviously not a healthy relationship. You don't know how to even describe that relationship. There's so much to it that is just, I mean, you could say gross by the end.
Yeah. I mean, and it all, comes out that his mom could have had him killed by Rex Calabrese.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds like Rex kind of convinced her not to do it and to use like focus his sadism and use it.
Yeah, there's a lot there that's between that and then like, her feeling like she probably made the wrong decision after a while.
Hmm.
Um, she had a lot of years to think about that. And then on top of that, you got by the end his, you know, the what do you call it? The sex worker that he's, quote unquote in love with,
Eve.
Eve, Carlo, which it bothers me that her last name is Carlo. You don't do that by mistake.
Yeah.
Um, Uh, he has her dress up like his mom and dance with her. Like, so, like, is that like some weird Freudian thing where like he's actually in love with his mom like that, or is it more he's trying to replace his father because his father was never the man that a man should be that takes care of his wife? And I think those are complicated things to try to think about. Um, I don't know how you felt about that. Because I don't
I
think he's in love with his mom. I think it's more of a power thing.
No, I don't think he's in love with his mom. I think it's that affirmation that he needs from that figure.
Mhm.
Like, because there was
It's all about reassurance that he's doing the right thing or he's the man, basically.
well, there
Like
was
he's
there was that scene between Eve and Sophia in Eve's apartment
Mhm.
earlier in this when Eve gave up Oz's location. There's that scene where Sophia was talking about her clothes, her working clothes,
Mhm.
and she said, you actually dress like this or wear these things or whatever.
You play a part.
Yeah, and that's what Eve says. I play the role that, I'm paraphrasing, but I play the role that what they pay me to play.
Mhm.
So that's how I took it at the end was Eve is playing this role because he needs that motherly affirmation one way or the other. I didn't see it as a romantic thing. I saw it as she's the living stand-in for his mom because his mom can't function at this
Oh
point.
no, I completely take it like that, but also like it's weird
Oh, it's
because
no doubt it's weird.
you're having someone that you sleep with be the stand-in to your mother and you're
Yeah.
dancing with her. And it's yeah, there's a lot of sickness to that. And again, that's where it's like I don't think it is a romantic thing. I don't think it's even a sexual thing. I think it is just a power thing with him where because the mother is always talking about the father a lot and
Mhm.
how he didn't take care of them. And I think they don't say what happened to him, right? Did he die?
I can't remember. If they did mention it, I can't remember it.
But I think it's him wanting to make sure he took care of his mom like his father never did.
Hmm.
And again, those are like the fun stuff that makes it a good show because like you can't just have an evil bastard be an evil bastard for 8 episodes.
Yeah,
But that's like also one of those things where like I don't want to think about that too much because I just want Penguin to be an evil bastard. But like you have to balance it.
I do like that, and it's one of the things that you rarely see in the world of Batman. I mean, he is such an evil bastard that he brought the Maronis and the Falcones together.
Hmm.
Because one of my favorite scenes in the entire show is when basically like Sophia and Salvatore Maroni have teamed up at this point, and it's not an action scene; it's a quiet moment. It's them in the kitchen
Hmm.
when Sal
Yeah.
is up late and he's cooking because that's what him and his wife and his son did.
Yeah.
That was their family times cooking in the kitchen. I don't know. Part of it was so Italian, so kind of stereotypical Italian,
Oh
I
yeah.
guess. And I don't know. In the middle of all this chaos, I thought it was a nice moment.
So it also might be one of those things that is like blatantly a ripoff of Sopranos or a homage. You know, they like there are shot for shot scenes from the pilot that are shot for shot like the pilot of The Sopranos.
Oh,
Um
really?
yeah, they weren't hiding it. Like
Hmm.
they're honoring the show. Like you're not doing that by mistake. There are scenes in The Sopranos where they're cooking and showing how to cook things and like I mean, yes, it is definitely an Italian mafia trope. Even in The Godfather, they have scenes like that.
Well,
Um,
the Long Halloween. There's
yes,
the
exactly.
pasta scene or the
Yep. So I get why that's there. Um, it's to show the human side of these monsters to an extent,
Mhm.
and showing that I guess you're showing different levels of humanity with these evil people to show that, you know, Sal and Sophia are one level below the Penguin when it comes to evil.
Yeah, that was the juxtaposition because as bad as these people are, I mean, these humanizing moments show that they're nowhere near as bad as Oz is.
And I think that's a nice thing with going forward in the Batman universe. We've now eliminated the mob war. we
Hmm.
can now get to hopefully Batman villains. You know, like granted, there is a place for the mafia in the Batman world. We've seen it with the Long Halloween. We've seen it with, Batman Begins. We've seen it in all these movies. I mean, Maroni shows up in The Dark Knight. We've always seen the mafia or the crime families have a place. But I like that evidently this was supposed to be the story for the Batman 2, or at least a side story of the Batman 2. I kind of like that and this is going to sound again negative, but I like that we kind of got this out of the way. So now the Batman 2 can focus on the Batman and his villains and the Penguin,
Hmm.
not the Penguin versus the crime bosses again, because we've seen that. We don't need to see that again.
Yeah.
And this was done really well. I think it deserved a series. I think it works better for a series.
Yeah. And that's, I think, I mean, that's what the end of the episode, the end of the finale makes me so hopeful because there were so many nods, like I said. Because, I mean, you know, the hangman, Sophia is back in Arkham. So
Hmm.
she's not dead. We, there's a possibility she could show up again in the
Hmm.
world, whether it's in a movie or another series.
And
Um,
this might be unpopular. I don't want to see her in the Batman 2.
I don't know. I
I
mean,
don't think we need to.
yeah. The only thing that makes me think that we could is because of the letter
The
from
Selena thing.
from
Yeah.
Selena. But that could be a credit scene or something like that.
It could be a setup for possibly the Penguin season 2
Yeah,
or a
exactly.
Selena spinoff.
Yeah. And then seeing Oz in the very, very nice, tux at the end with the tails and the fluffy jacket. And he didn't wear it, but he had the top hat and the
That's the
umbrella.
kind of stuff that I don't get. Like why he has it, but you don't want to wear it. Also, how hard would it have been to make the gold accents purple?
Ah, you know.
Again, it's stupid stuff that like I feel like I'm nitpicking on that kind of stuff, but I just don't get like
Well, to me, and I can't confirm this because I don't have any involvement, but he looked like Arkham Penguin at the end of the series with the big fluffy tux collar and all that. He
oh
looked like
yeah, yeah.
Arkham Penguin.
Did he not have purple in Arkham? No, I think you're right. I think he did just
Yeah,
have
he's more
black.
muted black and whites.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I loved seeing him in the tails. I do wish they'd have put the top hat on his head, but
Hmm.
whatever. And then of course the bat signal to end the series. All of those things in conjunction made me excited for what I'm hoping is to come. And I'm with you. I think we have effectively eliminated the mob in
Yeah.
this universe.
Hmm.
Let's move on. That's the
Yeah.
hope I have at the end of this series that we now have room to move on to something more
Yeah.
Batman-y.
And again, like we sound negative when we say eliminate them. No, it was a great ride. It was a
Yeah.
fun ride to see them eliminated. I'm glad it wasn't taking away from the Batman. It deserved its own story.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I heard an interview with the actor that plays Vic today, and he was talking about which we had heard rumors and murmurs, but that he was talking about how throughout the Penguin series they were leaning more and more into how cold it was getting in Gotham because they were starting to wear more layers and things like
Hmm.
that. And he made the statement that they had told them that the Batman Part 2 is going to be a very snowy Gotham.
Hmm.
And that just hearing that from an actor excites me because
Yeah.
Gotham in the snow is cool.
Yeah, I agree. And apparently this does pick up right where the Batman, or this ends right where the Batman 2 is going to pick up. So hopefully that's the case. Again, it's that's the only thing that stinks is, man, imagine if this show came out like 3 months before the Batman Part 2.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like they
Uh,
haven't even started filming.
I know, I
Like, come
know.
on. Now, again, the argument for that I've seen, and again, I personally don't think this is a good excuse, but they said this was essentially the script for the Batman Part 2. So he had to start over again when they decided to make this a show.
Which
I
I
don't,
I don't know
I,
about the validity of that, but I'll say this. If that's the case, I'm
he
glad
still
this
had
be
plenty of time.
well, if that's the case, I'm glad this became a series versus
Agree.
becoming the Batman Part 2.
Agree. That's I'm very happy about that. It seemed like while he was writing it, the treatment at least, he felt like there was too much there for it to be the movie. He needed something else, and I completely agree with that. I just still feel like moving a little slow.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. All right, well, I know, like you said earlier, there's 8 episodes. It's hard to get into every single detail. But is there anything that's really stuck in your mind about the series that you wanted to talk about?
The only thing I don't think we've given enough time to is Sophia. I really think uh, Christina
Christine Milioti.
Milioti,
Hmm.
Christine Milioti, she was excellent throughout the whole show.
Yes.
I do wish she was actually the Hangman. As the
Yeah.
comic book fan in me, like I get for the show, it makes sense she was set up. That's the whole point of the revenge scheme. I do wish they gave her more to do as the Hangman. Like maybe she was set up but then became the Hangman after. I think that would have been cool.
I mean, in the end, she virtually did. I mean, even though she wasn't
She
strangling
wasn't
people,
hanging them. She wasn't
no,
hanging
but
them though.
she got pretty rough.
Oh, she was definitely an evil psychopath by the end, um, which she should be.
This is, you know what? Now that since you were talking about Sophia, that's something that's been brought up over and over again by several different people I've heard.
What is she evil?
No, no, no.
Oh.
The doctor.
Hmm.
Do you think the doctor was in her mind? Because I've seen several people say I don't think the doctor is real. And I was thinking about it, and I don't know that anybody else in the show interacted with him.
Yeah, he talks to the other doctor in the first episode.
Does he?
Yes.
Okay.
They have a conversation. It's possible that after she is released, he's in her mind. Now that
Yeah,
I think about that, but I don't think that's the case. This show is too grounded for something like that, I feel.
maybe. I don't know, but
But
well, I mean, she is certifiable at this point. So,
but I'm almost positive because I feel like he has a conversation when they're in Arkham to the other doctor about what they're doing with Sophia
mhm.
in like one of the early episodes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I haven't seen that, but I could see that kinda.
The only thing that gave it validity to me is because I didn't think about that the entire series as I was watching it. But somebody was saying, well, it's just so strange, that I mean, he's with her this entire time after she gets out of Arkham, and then when she goes back,
He's now a doctor again.
yeah, and when he brings the mail, it just seems like very impersonal. So I don't know. I maybe I'd have to
And
rewatch it.
how did he go back to Arkham as a doctor?
Yeah,
But then how did she get the letter? Is the letter fake?
I don't know.
Or is he real at the end?
That's I think that was the perception that the person was going for was he's real in Arkham and outside of Arkham he's not real.
That's interesting.
So I don't know. Maybe if we
Yeah.
get more Sophia in the future, we'll get an answer to that. But
Hmm.
interesting theory.
Yeah.
So um I think the biggest the biggest thing takeaway for me from this show outside of the penguin and being his surroundings is just I thought because you had concerns about the mom story
Hmm.
in the pilot when we talked about this last time. I thought that woman that played his mom, I mean, Sophia was great, but that woman that played his mom she nailed it.
Have you heard her in interviews too? She sounds nothing like she does in the show.
I know. And I thought
It threw me off completely. And she is like 70 something years old. Um, she does not sound it in interviews.
her performance when she goes into the dementia state that she has,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought she did an amazing job. And it's sad. It's sad to watch, but I mean that goes to show how good of a job she did with it.
Hmm.
And also how despicable all these people are to use that
Yeah.
against her.
And also, the girl that plays Eve Carlo, Carmen Ejogo or Ejago. She was great. I mean, talk about a chameleon. She plays different parts on the show, and
True.
I mean,
Yeah.
and for her to go back to Oz at the end shows you what you need to do in Gotham to kind of survive. I mean, she
Mhm.
throws Oz under the bus. I guess trust the fact that Sophia didn't throw her under the bus. So it feels like she still has to go back to Oz to do her thing and hopes that Oz will never find out.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed. And now
You
I'll
don't,
give you
real quick, you don't think there's anything to her name being Carlo, right? There can't
no.
be. Like, how could they do that? But did you hear, you listened to the podcast for the finale?
Hmm.
I will say this bothered me a little bit. Did you hear about the whole Vic thing? Why they named Vic Victor? Do you remember?
Was it? You'll have to refresh my memory. I remember
So
something about it, but
she said she just liked the name Victor, but she also thought it would be fun if people started speculating that he was Victor Zaz.
okay, yeah, yeah.
And I'm
So,
like, really? Like, I don't think anyone thought that.
well, you'd be surprised
Oh,
because
I don't.
apparently that was a big thing. Because that interview I heard with the actor earlier today,
Mhm.
they brought that up about him potentially being Victor Zaz, and he kind
It
of
never
laughed
once
at it.
crossed my mind.
No, but he laughed at it and said, "Yeah, I've got a lot of social media interaction about that."
That's funny. It's a weird thing to do to like play with the fans that way, but also like, yeah, it never even occurred to me that that would have been the case. Um, I don't know.
Yeah,
Sometimes when I hear stuff like that, I'm like, they just find weird names and like they don't know anything about the character. They just want to use the name to mess with us.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Um, I don't know. The only problem with this is, and this is not anything to do with the show, but like going when we go to get ready for the Batman Part Two, the only detriment to this is it is an 8 episode show and it's a lot longer than a movie.
To
So if you're,
rewatch.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
for rewatches, which the Batman Part One is not short by any means. Um, but I mean, you add 3 hours on top of 8 hours, and that's that's a lot to watch
it
leading
is.
into
I,
a new.
I mean, it's like watching what, 2.5 movies, 3 movies. It's easier than an MCU rewatch.
It's about like a Lord of the Rings rewatch.
Yeah. Yeah, what was it last year when Rings of Power came out? I'm like, Rings of Power is as long as watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's actually less,
Yeah,
if I
well,
remember correctly.
now that season two's out, I don't think you can say that because there
No,
were some.
now it's The Hobbit also.
Yeah, because Megan and I watching that show, some of those episodes were like an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh,
So, all right. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. I mean, I will say at the beginning of the show, I felt like you were going to be a little more negative than you turned out being just from your initial thoughts. But it sounds like we're
no,
pretty close to the same page.
yeah, I like the show a lot. It's just I don't think it did anything. Again, I don't think it needed to do anything groundbreaking, but it just didn't do anything groundbreaking for me. It was a great show with a lot of twists, a lot of oh crap moments, which it should have, and it was great. But I also like I do feel like the hyperbolic, you know, takes on it are like best show ever and this and that. Like I wouldn't put this up there with best shows ever. I would like it's not up there with best comic book shows ever. Um, I may have even enjoyed Peacemaker better. And again, I just loved Peacemaker. But
Mm,
they're different shows. It's hard to compare them. But I still had a lot of fun with it and it fits the Batman world perfectly and I'm glad that it might bring more people into the world.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are going to discover the Batman
Hmm.
just by watching this show, which is a good thing. I think you described it perfectly earlier. This feels like the the really good tie-in comic
Hmm.
in between the story. Do you necessarily have to watch it? No, but I think I mean, if you've got the time, I think it's worth your time. And I think the one thing that it establishes for me, going into this show, I said my favorite part of the Batman was Oz, was the Penguin.
Yeah.
And as sick and despicable as the man is in the show, or the character is, he's still my favorite part of the universe so far. So I mean, he's credit to Colin Farrell and the performance that he brings. I just he is, and I think the thing of it is he is the most Batman thing about the entire universe so far.
Yeah.
He is the Batman villain, the quintessential Batman villain. He's sick. So,
Yeah, he's the most comics accurate Batman villain we've gotten in the show or the movie.
yeah.
Like in the universe. You're right.
Hmm.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So thank you, Joe. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed watching the show. I enjoyed talking to you about the show as we were watching each episode. So thanks for joining me to chat about it here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. This was a good idea. Kind of just spur of the moment discussion. It was fun to get on here and talk about the show, and while it's fresh in our memory, right after it wrapped up,
Hmm.
and we'll be back on here soon enough with Superman and Lois thoughts, and hopefully some other stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and I apologize everybody for we didn't have a Halloween episode this year. Nobody hates that more than I do, but scheduling is a beast sometimes. So my apologies for that. We will strive to get you guys a holiday episode this year. But Joe, thank you again. Why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
You guys can find me on X, Instagram, and Letterboxd as JForn11, and on Facebook as Joe Fornaroto, FORNAROTTO.
Excellent. And as for myself, you can find my personal accounts on Instagram, X, and Letterboxd at mecarter89. That's mecarter89. The show can be found on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads at tfrbatpod. If you'd like to support the show, the best and easiest way to do that is to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any platform that you listen to. If you leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts, we will read those on the show. We also read emails, so if you'd like to send us one, just shoot those to tfrbatpod at gmail.com. If you're looking for another way to support the show, we don't ask that you spend a dime on this show, but if you'd like to, you can go to redbubble.com and search Shop TFR, all one word. You can find our logos on all kinds of cool merch there. Our theme song was created by the very talented Gaurav Venkateswar, and his music can be found at gvtunes.com. Don't forget to go to the link in the description of this show. Go save yourself some money at Organic Price Books and support this show as you do so. But for Joe, I'm Eric. Thank you so much for joining us, and until next time, make sure you keep that bat signal lit and pointed skyward. Batman was created by Bill Finger and Bob Kane and is the sole property of Warner Brothers Discovery. The Fire Rises, a Batman podcast, is in no way associated with DC Comics, DC Studios, or Warner Brothers Discovery. The thoughts and opinions of the participants of this show are their own and do not reflect the companies that they work for. Thank you for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.